to her brand Kissa and beyond that as well. She comes up with such beautiful textiles for Kissa, and more than that, Kissa talks about a story which is related to textiles, weaving, artisans, and their life. I remember Kissa for those intellectual evening talks that would take place there, and that would be like again a celebration of Indian textiles and fashion as such. Other than that, also I've read books that are written by ma'am. She constantly works as a patron for good art movement that happens in the city. So I think it's gonna be a great opportunity for all of us and our students, of course, to hear from her, to get bit of her wisdom shining on through this lecture. So over to you, ma'am. I'll get your presentation shared in a while. You can start with your discussion. We at
Okay.
present have our semester 3, semester 5, and semester 7 students here, and they study fundamentals of textiles here, where we kind of introduce them to the technicalities of textile and different construction. Then they also have dedicated semesters where they learn about different traditional textiles across the country. And plus, because it's Amity, we have students across the country too. So you would find people who are actually representing the states and all that the textiles emerge from. We also have students studying traditional embroidery. So there they kind of focus on the traditional embroideries that we have in this country. So with that kind of prerequisites already, they're eagerly waiting to hear from you. So over to you, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. I must start off by saying that this is a very, very eminent gathering, and I'm a little nervous to say anything because I'm sure you people know so much, and you've been exposed to a lot. So I wanted to make this interaction very, very interactive, and I want you to participate more than me speaking and talk about your experiences and what you understand. So I've put together a motley number of slides, and to just share some of the ideas which are already there in your mind to kind of go over what you already know. So the first slide that Devaditya has put up is about the fabric map of India. So this is just to show you that India is so rich in its diversity of textiles. As you can see that there is every kind of color, design across the country, and they have been demarcated according to states. So I think we need to celebrate India as a very, very diverse nation of extreme diversity, richness, and I would say it's a huge legacy that we have. And when we talk of traditional Indian textiles, let's break up the three words. Devaditya, can we go to the next slide? Over here, I've just put together some thoughts. And when we say tradition, what does it mean to all of you? Can anyone answer that? Can anyone contribute an answer? I've written the dictionary meaning of tradition or parampara, but I think each one of us has some sort of a connect with tradition. So, what is it that you identify with? I would like you to answer, and remember, there's nothing like a good or bad answer. All answers are interesting, and we can all learn from something or the other. Deepali, yes. Srividya, so Deepali, what is your idea of tradition?
You know,
Deepali,
ma'am, actually, yes,
can
ma'am.
you speak up a bit, please?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
No, I can't hear you, Baba. Yes, Deepali, tell me.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
you are. If you could
Okay,
speak up a
okay.
little louder, it'll be nicer.
Okay. So, ma'am, for me, a tradition is something which our ancestors gave us. Like we are following them since now and will be following further too. Like tradition is something which has its own authenticity and like whatever we include in our work and which includes tradition, it shows something that has like something connection to it, so that is tradition to
Okay.
me.
Thank you, Deepali. Now let's ask. There are a lot of hands that have gone up, so we'll talk to everyone a little bit. And I can see Anjali, but there were three others who came up before her. Devaditya, do you remember the order in which the names came up?
yes. I think Srividya had raised her hand first. Srividya, you can go and share.
Acha,
Srividya?
ma'am, I just want to, just give my, opinion. Like the students can also, you can switch on, video because we want to see, because ma'am is there. She wants to see you also. When you're talking, you can switch on your video also. Okay, in case it is possible. Okay, thank you.
Yes, the condition, but if possible, that would be nicer. Even I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so
Srividya,
Dipali
but-
gave us a very, very interesting description of what tradition is. And I would say it's like a little formal, it's a little theoretical. So I would like Srividya and the others to come up with what exactly and how is tradition relevant to a fashion designer. Srividya?
Uh, Ma'am,
Yes.
tradition is something that I would say that has been created by, or that has been going on since time immemorial, and that has been something that our ancestors has been doing, and it is deeply rooted to our culture as well. And we know India to be a very diverse country, so it has a lot of depth to it. And the other question that you said, ma'am, how it is related to our industry, well, we know that how people like to show their ethnicities through clothing as well, so I think that has a deeply root in there as well. So yes, ma'am, that
Okay, so
is,
what she's very interestingly says that it's very deep rooted, and you should show your ethnicity towards your tradition. So, as I see it, that traditions, are they relevant for the younger mindset? Would you seriously think that you would wear something that's really traditional? So, how does it really become important in terms of fashion design? I mean, when you talk of ethnicity, so which elements of fashion and traditional fashion would be relevant to you? Like supposing, there are old ways of wearing saris that would not be relevant to a contemporary lifestyle. So there is one very important word I'm looking for. How can tradition become relevant in today's world? The next person, would you come up and answer that?
Like you are next. Jyotirmay, can you go ahead and share your
Yes,
thoughts?
sir. Good evening, ma'am. As the previous speakers told about tradition, the theoretical part, for me, tradition is like something my ancestors carried. I am moving forward with it, but with love and with my own thought of it, how I'm going to carry it in my own way. I think that is how the beauty of tradition,
So
like you can carry it on.
I think the important word over here is identity, right? So we
Yes, ma'am.
identify with
Yes,
what is
ma'am.
ours, what is belongs to our country. When we're talking of tradition, when she's talking of deep rootedness, so it's a question of identity, which is important for fashion. So at some point of time, if there is time permitting, I've got some slides on politics of fashion also. So when you come to my slide, I have not only given the definition of tradition and parampara, but I have also asked what are the sources by which we can know about our traditions. Like there are fashion traditions. I will show you slides which are 1,000 years old, 500 years old. So what are the different sources by which we can learn about our traditions? Anyone, let's come up with one word answers. Put up your hands and just answer. Don't wait.
Okay. So, ma'am, maybe you can move ahead with the presentation a bit, or you want to interact with the
No,
students?
I want to see the presentation, please. I
Okay.
asked.
Okay. So maybe Shubhanjali, Aarti, and others, you can write about what you wanted to share in the chat box. I'll read it out later on to ma'am. Okay.
Okay, so how do we know about our traditions? So there are various sources through which we can know about our traditions. And there were times when now it's very well documented on media. I think about 50, 60 years ago, we had magazines. So I haven't deliberately written about the sources for identification because I wanted you to come up with it. So we have songs, we have dance, we have painting, we have books, drama, which all talk about our not only our cultural traditions, but which is so deeply connected with our uh, dressing up, with our fashion, with our inherent textiles. And in relevance to tradition, there's one important point which I wanted to make before I move on to the general discussion of Indian textile tradition, and that is the geographical indication. Are you all aware of what geographical indication is? Everyone? Who doesn't know anything about geographical indication? Will you put up your hands? Can anyone quickly, in about 10 words, tell me what geographical indication is? Anyone? Priyobruto, yes, tell me.
Yeah, ma'am. Good evening. Geographically, in GI indication is the particularly indication is given by the by a corporate government bodies, and it actually shows that what is the identity in particularly one region. It's like the Rasgulla is a GI for the West Bengal, the Darjeeling tea is the GI for the Darjeeling.
Excellent. Very
So-
good answer. So if you see my slide, I have put down the various points of geographical indication. So in today's world, it's become very important to know the source of our traditions, where it's located, and what the original cultural forms are. So can we see the slide, please, on geographical indications? The same number 2 slide.
This?
Number 2 slide.
I'm in the number 2 slide already, ma'am. Can you see it?
Yeah, I hadn't. Okay, so there are points about the geographical indication which I've written there. So it came from the Trademark Practices Act, which tagged 1900 as the year. So it goes back almost, well, I would say 200 years. So, textile traditions which existed then and which have come, which have persisted. So there is a regional ethnicity. You people use the word ethnicity. So I would say that traditional textiles and fashion have a regional ethnicity also, a regional connect, which we saw in the India map. So when we talk of sources of information, let's go on to slide number 3. Can we highlight it? I can't see it. Can everyone see slide number 3? So
Yes,
what do we
ma'am.
see here? So how is this important for traditional textiles? Can anyone tell me? This is 5,000 years ago. And this is very easily, what would one say? This is the Mohenjo-daro civilization. So what do we understand about textiles from here? When I said from art and culture, you can make out? Yes, Dipali, tell me. Yes, Dipali?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, in our first semester, we learned about history of fashion, in which we read about this, and from there we came to know
No,
about
I am
the.
specifically asking you, how can we understand
Yes,
anything
ma'am.
about fashion from these 3 slides? The first, the one on the top right-hand column is a kind of a fossil of a silk fiber from 5,000 years ago, excavated near Harappa. And the other
Yes,
2
ma'am.
slides are very, very interesting. So what does it talk about? It makes a fashion statement.
Ma'am,
Yes,
the off-shoulder,
Tanu-
the off-shoulder
Tanu-
thing, the
Tanuja?
motifs. Okay.
Yes. So the man is wearing a very, very trimmed beard, and he's wearing a toga, which has got very fine embellishment on it. And the woman is wearing some kind of a dupatta, and she's wearing a lower cloth and exquisite jewelry, which seems to be very heavy, and a headdress. So you get a very good idea about what the fashion was at that point of time. Can you make out, can you tell me something about the drape of the cloth from this? Because they obviously
Is
had
this Stola?
real life models. So it's a kind of a soft textured cloth, one would say. And it was more like, more than coarse textiles, it was a little finer textiles, which were depicted in these sculptures. So this is how we find out the sources. We have to keep all our blinkers up and we have to make connections. So when we're talking about our textile heritage and for our own personal fashion statement, we have to learn to make connections and find our own identity. So I would say that identity is the most important word here, and connection is the second most important word when we talk of tradition and fashion and heritage. So Indian textiles have been embedded in every aspect of its identity. And from the recorded documents from about, say, about 600, 700 years ago, we can make out that fashion and textiles especially were used by the masses, yes, but they were especially significant in these 3 areas. The courtly splendor, which is adornment of kings, for religious worship, and for global trade. So I think all of you must be knowing what these three aspects are. If any of you want me to highlight any of these, you can put up your hand. I will talk about any of these sections. Otherwise, we can move on to the next slide. Let's move on to the next slide. Can we see the next slide? I can't see it, Devaditto. So the next slide shows a map of India with, it's important for textiles to prosper and develop. Can we have the next slide? I can't see it.
I'm on the slide that with the heading India's rich natural resources. Student, please.
Yes. So there are India's very rich natural resources. So this kind of tags what is available where. So you can see that the kind of textile that's available in each region, cotton, wool, and silk is available. So how did textiles develop? It developed according to the availability of the natural resources in these areas. So you can see that it's all dotted with a lot of natural resources. And after, say, about the 17th or 18th century, we started bringing the natural resources to other places to manufacture textiles and garments. So this was during the British rule, and there are a lot of politics attached with different kinds of textiles during the British rule, which made and unmade our textile industry and kind of ruined our, very well documented and very, good practices of our textile traditions. And we will talk about it a little later. Can we move on to the next slide? This is just to focus on the availability of raw materials. So when you're talking of textile tradition, what are the aspects we talk about? We talk about dyes, natural dyes. I think all of you know about moderns and indigo and hartaki. So indigo is a very important kind of ingredient simply because it played a very, very important role in our national movement. Are all of you aware of what indigo did in our national movement? Again, it's a politics of fashion. Can anyone tell me quickly in 2 sentences how indigo became a very important, tool of revolution in our national movement? It became a trendsetter around the 18th century. Does anyone know about the indigo revolution? Do you know about Neil Dorpon? It was a play written by. Can anyone help me?
Are you talking for the Neel Chash Andolan, ma'am?
Yes, the Neel Chash Andolan, very much, yes. Sorry? Okay, so what happened was that indigo Neel was a very popular dye in Europe. So what the Britishers did was they started forcing the farmers in Bengal to cultivate indigo. And they started charging a lot of taxes. The farmers took a lot of loans because they were forced to cultivate indigo, and it kind of broke their back, and people started dying because of it. In fact, the Neel Kaur, the indigo tax collector, is depicted on a Baluchari sari, which we will see later on. And then there was an uprising in this place in Bengal called Chaubhaga, and they stopped the indigo cultivation. And the indigo cultivation was also ruinous for the soil, because after cultivating an indigo plant, you cannot have any other chash or harvest. So all these things are very important when we are considering the fashion. We are talking of organic fashion, the cotton, the organic cotton. Do we really have organic cotton? We need to ask ourselves these questions. Is it feasible? In the olden days, our tradition, we always use organic cotton. There was nothing but organic cotton. But organic cotton got depleted because of the British policy of using these other balls of cotton, which they imported from America, and they forced the farmers to use that, which needed a huge amount of pesticides. So which ruined the organicity of the whole fiber. Another part of the textile process is printing. So since many days and years, we've been using block, resist, batik, painting as printing, the embroidery techniques. And I forgot to mention what's important very much nowadays is the dyes from temple flowers. So people give so many flowers to the deities. So what people have started doing is collecting these flowers and making natural dyes out of it, which is a very, very important industry in today's world, which is rooted in the past. There's tradition in it. The bottom part of the slide is very, very important. The weaving process. Now, what does the word text mean? The text comes from a Latin word meaning weave. It means interlacing. So a textile is something that is interlaced. So a textile is not simply something like cotton or silk or muslin, even anything that's interlaced, like rope, which is interlaced, crochet, knitting. These are all textiles for all practical purposes. Because there's a warp, there's a weft. Tana bana. Are you all aware of what a tana bana is? I think all of you must know what a tana bana is. So anything that's interlaced together is called a textile. So we just cannot refer to silk and cotton and jute. We use the whole ambit of anything that's interlaced, which is called textile. Now, when you use a warp and weft on a loom, the important thing is for the traditional textiles, before the mechanized looms came in, they were all hand woven. And why is the hand woven textile important? Can anyone tell me why is the hand woven textile more important than a machine made textile? Anyone? What are the, Sri Vidya, what are the disadvantages of a machine made textile? Yes.
Ma'am, I think the main difference.
Yes, Sri Vidya. Can you switch off your phones, all of you? Can someone else come up and tell me why is
Somebody removed me. Somebody removed me from the
I'll
meeting.
take care of that from my end. Okay, I'll ensure you.
Okay, so will someone else answer? Sri Vidya seems to be answering all the questions. Why is a handloom more? That's a traditional technique. The machine looms came in, say, about 200 years ago. You know of the spinning jenny and the Industrial Revolution in Europe. But before that, everything was hand woven. I mean, there was no mechanical element in it. So you would say that it is slow, we can't produce enough, there are defects, but it has huge intrinsic advantages over it. So let's quickly go into that and talk about it. Firstly, we are not wasting fuel. Secondly, we are involving labor, which is hugely important, especially in our country with such a huge population, and it is labor intensive. And thirdly, you must remember that any weaving process employs a lot of women. So when you say that the census says 1 lakh weavers, so those are the men who are in the forefront of the weaving industry. You must remember that the pre-loom process in a hand-woven yarn is always done by women. You know, the sizing of the yarn, where they starch it, they pull it, then they make it into balls, then they put it on the warp, that frame, the jala, and then the whole thing, when the men sit down on the looms to weave, is prepared by the women, the dyeing of the yarn. So that's why it's very, very important to bring more and more workers into this industry. And the fashion industry, basically the production of textiles, is 50% of our GDP. So you can imagine how labor intensive it can become. And if machines replace labor, not only do we lose the workforce, we're not providing employment, and we are bringing in machine processes, which is unhealthy for us. Now, on the right, can you make out a difference between a machine-made and a handmade textile? Anyone? On the right side, there are two pieces of cloth. One is a machine-made. No, Srividya, not you, someone else. One is a machine-made cloth and one is a handmade cloth. It's a very, very important way to make out the difference. So if it's handmade, a person spends, like for example, on a baluchari sari, a handmade sari will a person will take easily 12 to 14 days, and a machine made sari will be produced in 1 or 2 days. So that's why for a handmade textile you pay more, because there's a element of a person being involved. So earlier they were all handmade and they were very, very beautiful. Yes, Devjani, tell me, which one is machine made and which one is handmade?
Ma'am, not that. I just wanted to also say that since you've said that machine-made products take less time, and the ones which are handmade, they take a lot more time. This also kind of discourages the current buying behavior. Like, you wouldn't buy as much if there's not much production. You buy way less when it takes so much more time. So people appreciate the things made much more.
Right, Debjani, that's a very, very important question. And I think we'll need to have another talk on that. So we will talk about that on another day. That's slow fashion and fast fashion. So let's keep it aside. Let's talk about traditional textiles. I will get back to you. I will tell Devaditya to organize another session on that. That will require 1 hour to talk about. But I want to know if any of you know which one is a machine made and which one is a handmade, and what is the difference between the two pieces of cloth. Can anyone else? No, same one, Devaditya. They haven't answered my question. The two pieces of cloth on the right side. Shubhanjali, yes, tell me. The right side. Kadwa Golani and Fekwa Chalani. I'm not going to tell you what it stands for, but tell me how can you make out. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, the pink and the red one, the right side picture is the one with the machine, and the left one is with the hand, because like it shows that it's being like with the pencil first and then it's being embroidered with the hand.
Okay, that's not a very good explanation, so I cannot give it to you. I'm sorry. Can someone else answer this question? Can you the difference between the machine made and the handmade, and how do you spot textiles? So when you go to the market, if they're charging you a lot of price, they will say it's handmade, handmade, handmade. So how do you see whether it's actually handmade or not, and whether the price is deserving or not? Forget about the reasons for quick making and slow making. Yes, I saw Oloy Ghosh put up his hand first. Yes, Oloy, tell me. This is the most important lesson for textiles. Jyotirmoy, someone else before you put up hand.
Oloy, yeah, Oloy, you can go ahead and answer.
We need to see the back side of the garment first.
These are the back sides. These are the back sides of the garment.
The back side of the garment of a hand knitted will be not as clean and tidy. There might be some knots, so it's not that organized. So that's one of the basic.
So among between these two, which one is handmade and which one is machine made?
I feel so the red and pink one is the industrial one, and the hand woven one might be that pink one.
Okay, I will keep it aside for the time being. Jyotirmoy, it's very important for you all to think about, look at it and think about it. Yes, Jyotirmoy, tell me, then we'll move on. No, Dipali, not you, Jyotirmoy.
Ma'am, I was thinking the pink and green one is the handmade one, and the another one is the machine one, because I was thinking, yes, the red one.
I'll give it to you, but tell me the reason why.
Yes, ma'am, I was thinking the reason is that the handmade one will be more less vibrant. I think the red and pink one is more vibrant to be a machine thing.
Okay, so if it's a very, very bright piece of material, it cannot be handmade, right? Is that your logic?
Yes, that's my logic.
I'm sorry. I'm not moving from this slide till I get the right answer.
Okay, maybe we can hear from Tanuta now.
Tanuta?
Ma'am, I think it's the pink and the red one because of the size. I think the size of the flower kind of changes, and it's the flaw. The handmade ones are never going to be perfect. The machine made ones are. So I think that's why.
So the red one is handmade because it's got, it looks untidy.
Not like the sizes are not exact. Is that the
thing?
Okay,
remember that this is the back side of two swatches, right? So should I give them the answer, Devaditya?
Maybe one more person will hear from.
Okay, one more person try.
Excuse me, sir. Actually, the handmade will be smooth enough, and the machine one will be having its ruffles at the back part.
Okay, I will kind of give it to you. So remember something, that a handmade, remember a human being is making it. So when a human being is sitting on the loom, there's a warp and a weft, and each motif is embroidered. It's done like an embroidery on the cloth, on the yarn of the loom. So because a person is doing it, there is a beginning and an end to that motif. In a machine, the machine doesn't know where it's going to begin and end. So there is how these machine-made looms work? Can anyone give me a quick answer? One quick answer. It's a 4-letter word. Can anyone tell me how these machine looms work?
Is it computerized?
Computerized, yes, but they are jacquards. These are cards which are fitted on a loom. And the cards, the yarn is arranged in such a way that it comes out automatically. So the loom doesn't know which one to end and which one to begin. So yarn is just passed across see in the right one, you can see that the red yarn goes from one flower to another. There are these long tails of the yarn. That is the machine, because the machine does not have a beginning and end. On the left side, can you see it's like an embroidered flower? All of you? Can all of you see the embroidered flower on the left? That can only be done by a human being. The right side is a machine. So what they do is they normally pass the yarn, and because the yarn will get caught in your chappal and other things, they will cut it. So it's called cut work. So kadwa or golani is the handmade kadwa. Fekwa, where you're throwing the yarn, and chalani is the machine made. So kadwa fekwa is in UP, and golani chalani in Bengal. You have the jamdanis, you have the balucharis, which are all handmade or machine made. Have you all got this? Will you ever get this wrong again? Now you will know why a fabric costs so much. You just turn the backside, and if it's handmade, a person, obviously you'll have to pay him his daily wages and labor. Okay, now next slide.
Debaditya Desai, by any chance, like, is there any connection between the word fekwa and fake?
Yes, yes. Fake means to throw, and fekwa is like a very, very, local dialect in UP. So kadwa and fekwa. Kadwa is kadhai, and fake is to throw the yarn. So the yarn is a long yarn which gets thrown from one flower to another. Can you see that the yarn is going from one flower to another? So that is the fekwa. So this is a very, very important lesson. All old textiles were all kadwa and not fekwa. Now the next thing that's very important in traditional textiles is symbolism. Even today you have Indira Gandhi, and then you have these fantastic Kanjivaram sarees with Jayalalitha on it, and huge paintings. But in earlier times, it was very, very important. Where did the weavers and artisans get their inspiration? They got it from the environment. They got it from their home. They got it from their activities. So all traditional textiles had a symbolism which is quite regional. So let's see how many of you can figure out which region each of these come from. Because they're very, very, kind of specific. I talk about the ones that are specific to a region. For example, there's a chakuni in the middle. You have the grains. When you separate the grain from the chaff, it's a very, very common recurring motif in our Katha textiles, because the village rural women use it. Then below that chakuni is a red kalash. Can you see the red kalash? Can anyone tell me which kind of a textile it's from? Okay, now to the right hand side of the red kalash, there is a blue kind of a picture with a kind of a wheel in the center. Now the wheel is very, very symbolic of two things. It's from this particular state where this wheel is important. Can anyone tell me? Sorry.
Odisha. Sambalpuri from Odisha.
Very good answer. So
Yes,
what does the wheel represent?
No need to raise hands.
What does the
Temple
wheel
something.
represent?
Chakra.
The wheel represents the Rothe Chaka and the sun. So it's a round sun and the wheel of the Rath. So this is very, very obviously from Odisha. Then you have the fish, and then you have the shank. Right next to the wheel, there's the shank, the conch shell, which is again Odisha, which is near the sea. So they saw fishes, they saw sea. So the South Indian saris have a lot of fish and conch shells, and the Rudraksh, which is very, very spiritual. See on the right hand side, can you see that pink cloth with that round thing? That's a Rudraksh. So that's a religious symbolic picture. And I think I'll tell Debaditya to give you this presentation. I have shared the Kanjivara motifs. There were small ones which were taking up too much of space. So I put this there. And then the second picture on the top line is which state? What kind of fabric is that? Can anyone tell me?
Kalamkari, Andhra Pradesh.
Very good. So you see these, it is Kalamkari. So you see these South Indian masks. So, can you understand the symbolism of these traditional textiles? They have a very, very distinctive connect with the surroundings, with the culture, with the traditions, with the religion, with the dance, with the music. And the one next to that has Krishna sitting on a chariot. So this is the Baluchari. which has a long history, which I will tell you shortly when we move on to another slide. Can we go on to the next slide, please, Devaditto? Can we go on to the next slide, please?
Yes, ma'am, I'm already there.
Okay, now this is a beautiful picture. Now you will ask me, why have I put one picture on one page? So this is a woman's, can we go back to the previous picture?
Yes, I have gone back. The screen
So this
share
is a very
back.
beautiful picture of a woman reclining and having a hookah. Women were not so backward. And she's wearing this beautiful outfit, which is very, very sheer. Can anyone tell me what this material is?
Muslin.
Woven muslin.
Muslin.
Sorry?
Muslin.
Very good answer, muslin. So do you know that muslin has, 100 count, 200 count, 500 count? Do you know what these counts stand for?
GSM.
Can anyone tell me what these counts stand for?
Thickness of the yarns.
Excellent answer.
When they get
So a 500 count muslin, the yarn will be so fine that in about an inch, there'll be 500 strands of it used. So this is a very, very pretty picture. And there is a very beautiful story attached to a Muslim woman. Not this woman really, but I use this picture because it was so symbolic and so beautiful. So muslin is so fine, and they called it finer than air. Do you know that? That they called it finer than air. So there is a story that Aurangzeb's daughter Jahanara, she was dressed in the finest muslin in 7 layers. And she came out in the court. And Aurangzeb got very angry and sent her back. And he said, why are you not wearing enough clothes? So this was a very, very amazing story, which is documented. And she was actually wearing 8 layers of muslin. So can you understand how fine the cloth was? How fine the cloth was? That even 8 layers made the dress so sheer that, it seemed as though it was transparent. So this is the fascinating story of our heritage, of our textiles. Now, this is a fun quiz. I don't want anyone to kind of falter and tell me, and I will tell you a little story about each picture. Now, quickly, one by one. First one first. We should have actually got a prize for the person who answers first. The first picture. What fabric is it? The first picture. Anyone quickly? Can you hear me, everyone? There is a reason why this fabric is made. Can anyone tell me what picture, what it is? Yes, what is this fabric? It's a satiny field fabric, and the motifs are exactly like this. It's a woven fabric.
It's open to all, so no need to raise your hand. Just
Answer one by one. Quickly answer.
One-word answer. Okay.
I'll give the answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's a mushru or a himru fabric, which is made in Gujarat. And the very interesting thing about this fabric is that it is woven with a double weft, and the bottom is cotton and the top part is silk. So when you see this kind of a fabric where you see the satiny fabric where, it doesn't look like satin. So this was made for Muslims because they were not allowed to wear silk on their skin. So this was specially woven by the Nawabs because they were forbidden to wear silk. So this is the mushru and himru fabric, which is made in Gujarat for many years. And what you must understand is that most of these textiles and our heritage was under the patronage of kings and royalty. So they were very, very grand, and they spent a huge fortune. So the next one, anyone, what sari is it and which state? Tell me.
Banarasi.
Excellent answer. It's a Banarasi sari. It's called the Jala weave. Can you see? It's like a jangla. And this is not pure silk and gold, but earlier it was made out of pure silk and pure gold. And if you go to the National Textile Museum, you'll see some of these pieces, and you can see them online also, but they are stunning. And they were all woven by hand, mind you. They were not, machine woven. So what the weaver does is he knows the whole weave, and he's counting while he's weaving. So just imagine the skill in it. Nowadays, it's all very watered down version, so it's different. The third picture. What sari is this, and who is this woman?
Kanchipuram.
Mangalgiri, South India.
Good answer. And who is this woman? Yeah, very good. Kanjivaram is South Indian, even though South Indians get upset and they say we're not South Indians. We all have a different state. But I'll give it to you. Kanjivaram is from which state specifically? Kanchipuram? There is one particular state where Kanjivaram is made. South India has many states. It has Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. Sorry?
Tamil Nadu.
Why are you hesitant? Speak out loud, Tamil Nadu. Okay, now the interesting anecdote about this sari is, can anyone tell me who this is? Any girls from the south of the Aravalis would be able to tell me. She's a very famous singer. She's MS Subbalakshmi. So once MS Subbalakshmi had a stage performance and she was wearing this blue colored sari, the one you see on the right. And the people went crazy because, she was such a stunning figure. And she has so much of a fan following that everyone wanted to dress like her. Like we want to dress like Ranbir Kapoor and all the heroines, Deepika Padukone. So this was like about maybe 70, 80 years ago. So they all went to all the sari shops and they said, we want that MS Blue sari. So this is called the MS Blue popularly even now in Tamil Nadu. This is the MS Blue sari. MS Blue color actually. Number 4. What is this? This is a palla of a very famous sari from anyone?
I'm just guessing, is it Paithani?
Excellent answer. It is a Paithani and this was made with real gold. It still has a little bit of gold in the warp and you can see the gold tinges and they're beautiful saris where they use, nature. They use peacocks and they use flowers and paisleys and so on and so forth. So I forgot to talk about, when we were talking of symbolism, that part was covered. Now, paisleys remind me, Devarita, I'm digressing a little bit. You all know what paisleys are, right? You know what paisleys are?
Yes, ma'am.
They're the mango-shaped thing. So Paisley is a place in Scotland. And all these things are called Paisley. And the Scottish people say the Paisley is ours, which is not true at all. Because much before the Scottish people came to India and took the Paisley as theirs and started making shawls in Scotland, the Paisley is an Indo-Iranian motif. Do you know that Muslims can't paint animals and human beings on their art or textiles? Are you aware of that?
Yes. Yes.
So any kind of a Muslim textile has flowers on it, right? Or they have their, the Allah ka naam or whatever, the paintings. So the Paisley was an Indian product. It was used in our shawls and in our Kanni shawls. And these shawls were taken by the Britishers and they copied it in Scotland and they called it Paisley, which became famous, which is actually ours. Okay, so don't even give them the credit for it except for the name. Number 5, anyone?
Ma'am, is it Gamcha from Bangladesh?
Sorry?
Ma'am, is it Gamcha from Bangladesh?
Gamcha from Bangladesh, no. Gamcha can also be from West Bengal.
Yes, it can.
These are, I'll give you the answer for this. Anyone?
Ma'am,
Madras fabric.
Excellent answer. So these are Madras checks. And the very interesting thing about these checks are they were woven like this. The yarns were colored and then they were woven. And they were very, very comfortable. They're pure cotton and they looked so beautiful. So they were worn as lungis by the fishermen. Now the Britishers liked it a lot. And they took it with them and they took it to America. And they were called Madras checks. But the problem with the Madras checks was that the color would bleed. You know what color bleeding is, everyone? When the color runs. So if you put it in a white washing machine, then all the other things will become red and blue. So the tagline for these Madras checks in the US became guaranteed to bleed. And they were a sellout. Can you understand the interesting analogy? Because it was bleeding and they were producing so much and they were so popular, they did not want to give up the production. A tagline became guaranteed to bleed. That means if it doesn't bleed, then it's not Madras checks. It's not the original. So you're taking it at your own peril. Okay, number 6. What is this? Which state does it belong to?
Ma'am, Kinnauri.
Kinnauri, I'll give it to you. These are Kulu shawls and they use a lot of geometric motifs. So what I'll tell you is that all the hill stations and all the regions, whether be it embroidery or fabric, they always use a lot of geometrical motifs. And Kulu shawls are very, very known for their vibrant colors. They have 8 to 10 colors, which they try to use in all their shawls. So it's a very, very specific Kulu shawl motif. Number 7. Number 7. Okay, so this is a fabric, and this has been depicted very beautifully in this painting. Now, who is this painting by?
Raja
I'm
Ravi Verma.
Sorry?
Is it? I'm not sure. Is it Raja Ravi Verma's art?
Excellent answer. So this is Raja Ravi Verma's painting, and his women wear these very beautiful sheer saris, and he was in Madhya Pradesh. I think it was Baroda, and Sarabai Holkar, Ahalya Holkar was a queen, and she got these woven. She wanted fabric like this, and there was a revival of these saris by someone called Sarah Holkar. She was a Caucasian woman who got married into this family, and she revived the Chanderi weave. Now you know which state it belongs to, Madhya Pradesh. Number 8.
Is it Mundu?
No, a mundu veshti is what you wear in like it's like a lungi. There is a which state does it belong to?
Kerala.
Ma'am, it's Kerala.
Yes, it is Kerala, and it's not called mundu. There's another name for it. It's called kasavu.
Katikara.
Kasavu. And kasavu you can make out from a mile off. They have this golden patta in the achal, and they have a golden border also. So are you understanding the instinctive feel for weaves and textures? So you can make out which state it is from, and you know there is no problem. Devadittu, we're running out of time, and I've got a lot more to say. The next one. This has got a long story actually. You know which sari this is? This is from Goa. It's called the Kunbi weave. And the most interesting thing about this is that Wendell Rodrigues claims to have found it, but actually there's somebody called Rohit who found out during his archaeological study that there was a particular tribe. They could not do the dance because they did not have the sari, the local dance. And this is a Gauda sari. It's a tribal sari. Read up on it. It's very, very interesting, the story. So I will not, we're running out of time. We have about 5 more slides to go through. Number 10, anyone? What is this?
Ma'am, is it Gicha or
Very good. So this is a Gicha. It's a Matka tussar. It's a wild tussar, which is generally found in which state?
Ma'am, is it Bakura something? Is this related to West Bengal in some way?
Bakura, you do get it, but this is actually from Bihar. The Bhagalpuri silk, have you heard of?
Yes,
so
ma'am. Yes,
basically, the Bhagalpuri silk sarees are like this. You have finer versions too. Number 11. Anyone, girls?
Kota.
Sorry?
Kota.
Kota, yes. So Kota comes from which state? The name?
West Bengal, ma'am.
No, Kota. It's a very famous place for tuitions.
Rajasthan.
Gujarat.
Excellent answer.
Gujarat.
So they're called Kota. It has a missing warp and weft, because of which it has this check kind of a, kind of a weave. And they're actually not from Rajasthan. They're from Mysore. They're called Mysuriyas locally, because when Tipu Sultan went up north to invade whatever king was ruling, my history is pathetic. So he took with him all the Khansamas and the weavers and everyone, because they would go off for a war for 5-10 years. So these weavers went from Mysore up to Rajasthan, and then they settled there. So this Kota actually is from Mysore. They're called Mysuriyas. The next 12. Can you raise the slide a bit, Devadittu? So this is again, it's called an Ilkal sari. And Ilkal sari is from Karnataka. And I just gave you the answer by mistake. So they have these little things in the arrows in the side. Can you make out? These are Ilkals from Karnataka. And this is called the Topteni weave. So this is how the achal is joined to the border. So have you seen the beautiful way it's joined like arrows? It's called the Topteni. Topteni. Then we go to the next slide. Are you getting bored, all of you?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Not at
6
all.
people have left. The next slide, please. I got a little carried away with my quiz. Now, which sari is this? This is from West Bengal.
Ma'am, is it Baluchuri? No, it's...
It is the Baluchari. This is a completely hand-woven Baluchari, which takes 16 days to weave. And see, Baluchari was made in Baluchar near Murshidabad. What you see on the aanchal are the Nilkaurs, the debt collectors. So the old balucharis had very, very exotic figures of Nawabs having hookah, and there were sceneries. And under the patronage of the kings and Nawabs, they made gorgeous material which they couldn't wear. It was so heavy that women couldn't wear it. It was just made to give to the Englishmen. So nowadays you have the balucharis with all the Ramayana Mahabharata, which was made in Vishnupur. So Baluchar went under the water. All the weavers migrated to Banaras, and the Banarasi is kind of an evolution from the Baluchari, and they started making local weaves. And the Baluchari died down, and some weavers went to Vishnupur and started making all these Ramayana Mahabharata, because nobody would wear this on their saris. But this is an original Baluchari sari, and what you see, the Ramayana Mahabharata, are actually copied versions, which started about 70 years ago. The next picture.
Jamdani.
Jamdani. You know how the word Jamdani comes? You know how the word Jamdani comes, Baba? Break up the word. Sorry?
Zamindar.
It's a flower vase, basically. Jamdani. Okay. A place where you keep flowers. So they have a lot of these floral kind of motifs, and they're hand woven. The number 3, the fabric is a very interesting fabric from West Bengal, from Shantiniketan. I'll make your life easier. What is it?
Generally,
Katha?
No, it's not katha. Generally, we see in rugs, it's like a cord kind of a thing.
This is Kesh, right?
Yes, it is Kesh. So this was started by Rabindranath Tagore. So this is the ultimate of sustainability and environment-friendly fabric. So what Rabindranath did was he started using old saris. They were made into kathas, and they were used in the weft of the sari. See, you have this raised thing. You have saris also like this with some raise, not the whole thing. It will become very heavy. This is just a fabric which can be made into cushion covers. So this is a case fabric where an old cloth is used in the weft, and it's got a very beautiful texture, but I love it because of the story behind it. Number 4.
Ma'am, it is Jardosi.
Nope.
Ma'am, it's Gorod. It's Gorod.
Yes, it's Gorod.
Yeah.
Ma'am, silk actually.
So where do you wear Gorod?
In Doshami, especially just
Pujas.
because it's a ritual to wear
West
silks in
Bengal.
Bengal.
Punjabi.
In Bengal, you wear it during Pujo. And the true Gorods are unbleached silk. So there are very interesting stories around the Gorod. They're made in Murshidabad. And it's unbleached silk, because bleaching it loses its purity. And in the olden times, the weaver made it only after having a bath. So these are puja saris, and they're very auspicious. Five, 6, and 7. Quickly. Now tell me what 5, 6, and 7 are.
And the 6th is Patola.
6 is Patan Patola.
5 and 7?
7th is Ikkat.
Okay, so all 3 of them have the same weaving style. Okay, which is Ikkat. Where does the word Ikkat come from? Anyone? Quickly. The word Ikkat comes from Indonesia. Okay, so Indonesian Ikkat is very famous, but these 3 styles of Ikkat are from India. Now, whether it went from Indonesia to India or India to Indonesia, we don't know. Can you tell me the states which these 3 Ikkats are from?
Pochampalli, Gujarat,
because of the
and
designs.
Orissa.
Yes?
Pochampalli, Gujarat, and Orissa.
Excellent answer, this young girl. So the Pochampalli is the the fabric with the geometrical motifs. The middle one is Gujarat, which is Patola, and the one on the left is a Sambalpuri, which is from Orissa. So each one of them have very different symbols, like the Sambalpuri will have the fish and the conch shell, and you can make out it's from Orissa. Number 8.
From the Gamcha.
Gamcha, which is from West Bengal and Bangladesh. And can you name a woman who made it very, very famous all over the world? She's from Bangladesh.
Bibi Russell.
Excellent answer. Bibi Russell. She has popularized the Gamcha, and it's become the style fabric of the world. Number 9. Which state is this from?
From the silk.
Sorry? Anyone tell me? These sarees are generally
Ma'am, is
used.
it Shorno Chori?
See, Shorno Chori is the gold version of Balu Chori, which was again with gold thread. This is from which state? Red, white, and black. This is from Orissa. These are called bomkais. These are not ikkat really, they're totally woven with thread. Right? Number 10. I'm just going a little faster.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
this
this
is
is Mekhla.
Mekhla
These are
Chador.
Mekhla Chador, even though you got the state right.
Assam.
Yeah, tell me.
Assam.
Yes, ma'am. From
Assam.
Assam.
Yes, Assam. So what is special about these saris? What is it made from?
Muga silk.
Muga silk.
Very good answer. But what's special about Muga silk? What is another name for Muga silk?
Ma'am, raw
It's
silk.
called gold. No, it's not raw silk. It's like the regular silk. This Muga silk grows in Assam. And can you see the beautiful gold texture of it? It sells for almost 2,000 rupees a meter, this silk, today. And it's got a beautiful sheen. It looks like this only, gold. Okay. Now, 11 and 12 are saris which have been revived by a very famous favorite friend of mine, Hemlata Jain. And these are from Karnataka. So now Karnataka did not really have any woven saris like, Tamil Nadu and all that. So this woman found in Jedari Desamaya stories, there was this mention of a sari which a father gave to his daughter when she got married, and the daughter gave it to a temple, Nochkal, and she could not find any, trace of it, and they gave it to the Yellamma Devi temple, and Yellamma Devi is a temple which is made for the Nochkals. So she went looking for the fabric and she found it, and she made these saris called the Pateda Anchu. The one on the left is a Pateda Anchu, and the one on the right is made by her. It's a sari called Gomiteni. So Gomiteni is a sari which is given by the mother-in-law to the daughter-in-law when she's expecting. So very interestingly, when you see the Gomiteni, if you enlarge it and you see the border, you have the Dhan Choris. So in the symbolism, you have these, do you know what the Dhan Choris are in different kinds of fabric? They look like grains. I forgot to tell you that in the symbolism page. I have the picture of the grains. Can you see the border? It's made with, it looks like wheat husks. Can you make out, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
So that indicates prosperity. So this is such a beautiful story, and I had to include it for this. So she has revived these two saris. And another very interesting thing about this so-called South Indian saris is, especially about the Pateda Anchu and the Gomiteni, they are very long saris and they have two anchals. They have two pattas and two anchals. And normally they never wear a pad or anything. So what they do is, the sari can be worn on both sides. So in the morning, they wear it one side, and before their husbands are coming, they wash their faces and all and turn the sari around and wear it the other side. So it looks brand new. So even Kanjivarams, when you buy the authentic Kanjivarams, the old Kanjivarams, you'll find that they have two anchals. A lot of the old Kanjivarams, like the Air India saris and all, have two anchals. So all these Pateda Anchus and all have two anchals. So when you see the blue and red border, there's one blue anchal, there's one red anchal. Okay, so now we come to the surface ornamentation. The one on the first one, what is it? These are all basically resist ties. Tell me.
That's bandhej.
Bandhej. Bandhani from Gujarat and Rajasthan.
Gujarat and Rajasthan.
Yes.
That's resist.
This is a Sanganeri print.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so now the arrangement of these slides has gone a little haywire. Let's look at number 3 first. What is number 3?
Ma'am, Ajrak.
From Kashmir.
Good answer. So Ajrak in Middle East is blue. So normally these Ajrak saris are blue, but very, very loosely speaking, Ajrak saris are called Ajrak Kalkar. So these are basically printed in layers. So they print one layer, keep it aside, then they put a mordant and they print another layer. So these beautiful overlapping colors come out. This is Ajrak. So anything you see, not only these designs, but anything, it's a technique of printing. Then we come to number 5. What is this? Number 5?
Kalamkari.
Yes. Which state does it come to?
Andhra Pradesh.
Very good answer. These are made with natural dyes and cow dung and milk, and they smell awful. So if the sari smells awful, you know it's authentic. If it doesn't, you know it's printed. Okay. So let's come to number 2, 4, and 6. These 3 are very interesting slides. And basically they are the Sanganeri prints. And the kalamkari is also important because they come from a very important word, which is Indian, from which the number 6 slide, which is more European, came about. What are these fabrics called, you know? Especially number 4 and 6 in Europe, there's a very, very English sounding word for it. But it has a word, no, not paisley. Yes, they are paisleys, but there's a word for it. When you have these floral prints, they're called something with ch. What are they called? They're called chintz. Have you heard of the word chintz? Chintz.
Yes,
They're used for tablecloths and curtains and all. So the chintz word actually came from India, which is called cheat. Have you heard your grandmothers talk about cheat? A cheeta balona. This cheat is good. So cheat is a print. And these block prints were made in Andhra Pradesh. So when Vasco da Gama came to India in Calicut, he took these prints abroad and they became a rage. So kalamkari is also a cheat. Sanganeri is also a cheat. So basically, these are all from the same family, cheat, but they're called differently, and you know each one of them has a distinctive, distinctive appeal depending on the region. Like number 2 is Sanganeri, and number 4 and 6 are also made in Rajasthan. They're called cheat, and number 5 is kalamkari, which is also a cheat version of the chintz. Am I clear, everyone? Am I speaking too fast?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm speaking too fast.
No, no, no.
No, ma'am.
I'm trying to run through this. Okay, number 7. So this art form has recently been transferred to, kind of outfits. It earlier wasn't. It was used as a backdrop. Which state does it belong to? It's a beautiful painting.
Madhubani. Is it Madhubani?
Yes. From which state?
Bihar.
Good. Number 8.
Ma'am, batik.
Excellent answer. That's wax. This thing. And number 9.
The Jaipuri
print.
No, it's called a Bagru print. So what is special is these are all called resist dyes. Why is it resist dye? Because 8 and 9, 8 you put wax, 9 they use mud and all that, mud resist. And all of them are done in layers, because of which it's called resist dye, be it kalamkari or ajrak. So they're printing one layer and blocking off one layer. How is the bandhani done? They tie the knots, they dye one portion, and then they tie more knots and dye another portion so that the original color remains. So these are all called resist dyes. Okay. Now the next slide. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much and boring you probably, but I never realized I shouldn't have included so much. So these are very interesting embroidery styles. The first one is
Rajasthani.
Rajasthani and Gujarat. It's mirror work.
Yeah, Gujarati.
Number 2.
Chicken curry.
Chicken curry. So chicken curry is basically a kind of shadow work. It's beautiful. It is done on sheer fabrics. And you normally see one kind of chicken curry where you have a running stitch, but chicken curry has 16 stitches. And this one is a very beautiful piece I picked out. If you enlarge it, you'll be able to see the 16 stitches. Number 3.
Ma'am, it's
Fulkari.
Fulkari, which state?
Punjab.
Excellent. So they're called Bagh prints, Fulkari, which means flowers. They basically have geometric. You can make it out, make out these are Fulkaris from a mile off. Number 4. This shouldn't be here. It's not really Indian. Zardozi, which has been adopted by Indians and like how, but it's basically from the Middle East, and they use all these wires and all to do it. Number 5 is a very beautiful art embroidery form, which is done in one state in the south, let me tell you. And it's called Banjara embroidery. Which state? They use this kind of a herringbone. Sorry? It's a Lambadi embroidery from Karnataka. They do it in vibrant shades. They use a little bit of mirror work and a lot of herringbone. It looks very stunning. Check it out. Number 6. Where is this from?
Kasuti.
Kashida.
Number 6 is not Kasuti. It's Kashida or Tilla.
Sorry.
Which state is it from? It's
Kashmir,
from
ma'am.
Kashmir, Baba. You have all your shawls from there. So
Kashmir.
yes, it's Kashmir. So you see the shawls, their dresses, outfits, firans, even saris, which are done in this kind of a chain stitch. It's a chain stitch embroidery. Number 7. Number
Kasuti,
7.
ma'am.
That is a kasuti.
Good. It's from Karnataka, and they were generally made on ilkal saris, and they have these gopurams and all which are made. Number 8. This is from the Nilgiris. It's called the Toda embroidery. It's the Toda tribe, and it's all done in white, black, and red, and in these geometric shapes. You can make it out from a mile off. Number 9.
Kantha.
Katha.
This is the very basic kantha, but kantha is so beautiful. And I hope you know the story behind it about layering the sheets and making, and
Yes,
kantha
ma'am.
spoke of stories of households. The women made it in their free time. They embroidered their own lives on it. And there are again 16 stitches, and this is the very basic kantha version. Number 10.
Ma'am, Parsi.
Parsi, it's a Gangla border. Can you name a famous designer who's connected with this? Ardeen Lilovala, and no, I forget the name. I've got it mixed up. But what's special about this embroidery is that it's done in silk and thread. And which country do you see in this? It's very distinctive. The figures and motifs are very distinctive of a particular country, which is our neighbor. Tell me. When you see it, which country do you think of? Tell me.
I'm Sri Lanka.
No, Sri Lanka is more.
Ma'am, it's Bangladesh.
Ethnic.
Bangladesh.
Ma'am,
Bangladesh is more Indian and Bengali. The Jamdanis are from Bangladesh. The Kanta is from Bangladesh. It's from China. See, that work is very, very Chinese and Japanese. Have you seen the Japanese paintings? So it's very, very Chinese and Japanese, and they do it in silk thread. They're beautiful. They're all handmade. And I'm mixing up the name of the designer. It's Leela Wala, I think. And please Google it and find out. Now we've come to the almost the end of the presentation. Yes,
Is it Ashdeen Lilawala?
Yes, Ashdeen Lilawala.
Ashdeen
Thank you
Lilawala.
so much. Thank you so much. Now, this is a very important slide for me, especially. The politics of fashion. Remember, I spoke about it right in the beginning, and I'm talking about it even now. This is Gandhi on his spinning wheel, and he was called a half-naked fakir by who? Winston Churchill called him the half-naked fakir. But you must remember that Gandhi was actually a lawyer, and he came from South Africa, and he came to India. And why did he adopt this dhoti, which is a very short dhoti, and he wore no top cloth? Anyone? A wild guess?
To abandon the British fabric.
Yes. No, apart from abandoning the British clothes, it was very important for him to wear
Given
it.
identity to his fabric, like the
Swadeshi.
Yes, it was Desi, and it was identity with the empowered millions in India. So he wore it unashamedly, and even went to meet the Queen wearing this. So this is the politics of fashion, like the Himru. Remember I spoke about the Mashru and Himru? That the Muslims don't wear silk, so they put the cotton in the lower rung. And Gandhi made a lot of statements, not only with his dressing up, he turned a fabric into an economic, social, cultural, and political movement. Okay, the next slide, I will just speak a line on it, and then maybe we can do one whole presentation on this. I can speak on it for length. So what is Khadi? So Khadi, we loosely use Khadi for anything that seems rough, uneven, cloth, coarse. No, Khadi means sustainable. Khadi means homemade. So unless it is homemade, completely handmade, it is not Khadi. So supposing you're using a yarn which is not spun by hand and then woven into a cloth, that cloth is not Khadi. You can have a cloth which is Khadi where you have hand spun yarn and hand woven fabrics, and even honey can be Khadi. So anything where, it's a kind of a Khadi village. It's a sustainable environment where you have honey, you have cloth, which is all handmade. which is khadi. And it's so important because khadi involves women. It involves, it preserves our heritage. It encourages local industry. When you speak of eating local food and not buying foreign vegetables, what did he do? Swadeshi. He burnt the foreign fabrics to encourage the Indian industry. You know, the Britishers took the cotton and started encouraging Indians to buy imported cotton. And Gandhi said, no, this will not do. You just burn the imported fabrics. We need to promote our industry. So it is local, sustainable. It talks of women's empowerment because women can sit at home and spin the yarn even while doing the housework. So it involves women. So it's a very, very powerful statement made by Gandhiji. And not only did he wear it, adopt it, but he tried to convert the millions into this khadi movement. So remember, khadi is anything that's handmade. So any yarn that is spun on a machine and made into cloth is not khadi. I think they made it illegal to call all fabrics khadi about 3-4 years ago. Only fabric which is totally hand spun and hand woven can be called khadi. And remember that. So that's the spirit of khadi. The next slide, please. So Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. This is very, very close to my heart. And I have started wearing saris because I feel that it's handloom. It's made by a human being. It's very important to uplift the masses, to provide employment. We should wear handloom and support handmade to encourage the numerous weavers in the country who are maybe homeless, and think of the skills. You've seen the skills in the many slides, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. I've left out so many. All this will die if we don't adopt handlooms and handmade. So embrace the excellence of our country, of our textile heritage. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you so much. We will quickly go to the students. I'm sure they have a lot of questions, but maybe we can take only a few since we're running out of time. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. I must appreciate the discussion that going on. And also, ma'am, don't you think my kids are quite smart when it comes to traditional textiles?
Sorry?
Like, don't you think my students are quite smart and informed when it comes to traditional textiles?
I know, absolutely. No questions.
So
there is a lot more. I would like you to read up and create an interest so that you instinctively see. I did not study fashion. There were no fashion schools when I was growing up. So I just loved handloom somehow, and I kept asking questions, and I kept looking at the fabrics, trying to differentiate one from the other, and I learned it instinctively. So even if you don't like it, like someone asked me about the clothes nowadays, it's so important to adopt your own identity and wear it on your sleeve. And why should we go with what other people think is right? Go with what you think is right. Like everyone asks me why I wear a sari. I don't care. I wear it even to a nightclub. And that is me. So that identity is very important for fashion, and you must develop it. Your sense of identity, your sense of fabric, your sense of color, which is the most important differentiator, which will differentiate you from the usual masses. And that is very, very important. And somewhere, I don't mind if you go, bling. I don't mind if you go modern. But somewhere, I think as Indians, we need to promote our own culture and heritage. So I keep telling all my students and anyone who cares to listen, buy 2 handlooms in a year, wear a sari once a month. And I think it is very, very important for us to kind of protect our traditional textiles, to make a statement, and most importantly, protect the weavers, the humankind force. Thank you so much. Any questions, you can mail me. I will answer it. Devaditya will send them to me. And please start researching. Everything is available on Google. And you're most welcome to ask me. We can go on a textile trail. We can go into weavers' villages and see how they make things. We can watch the Jamdani process. It's the most fascinating thing that anyone has ever seen. Then you will realize the skill that goes into it, and the time taken is well worth its while. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, please be here with us. I would now like to request Suranjan sir to thank ma'am for her time and for her speech. Suranjan sir, are you here? Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Suranjan, sorry for overstepping my time limit.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. No, it was one of the most spectacular sessions that I've ever seen in the recent past. I think the students will also agree with me. So, your slides and the story that you told behind every slide, every item number 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's filled with information, and which the students definitely they have learned a lot. Though they knew the fabric, but then the way you spoke about it, how to identify it, the history behind it. So there is a lot. The faculties also learned how to take a proper class, how to get that connect with the students. And really, there was a lot of a lot of research behind, this presentation, which has been.
You're embarrassing me. No, not at all. But the only thing is that they have to learn how to differentiate between handmade and machine made.
Yeah, it is difficult. It is so difficult. I understand that.
No, it's very
nowadays,
easy once you know how to do it. It's very
yeah. But with the the recent changes, innovations, inventions. Even machine made fabric also looks to a great extent handmade. But then again, so that is the difference between a professional person and and an amateur who cannot differentiate between the two. But what I'm trying to tell is, you picked up all the saris, all the fabrics from different corners of the country. It's not only one particular place, and the story behind it, because the stories helps us to remember the fabrics. That this is what happened, and then Suva Lakshmi, and then therefore MS Blue, and all these things. So along with the students, we will also remember a lot of things. We are also taking back a lot of points from your presentation. So definitely it was a very, very interactive session, and I'm sure that we liked it and the students liked it even more.
Thank you so much, Dada. Coming from you, it's a real
No, thank you for taking out time and preparing this wonderful session for the students. I'm sure that it was a very, very effective session, and the students learned a lot from it. Okay, so that's it, and maybe we'll look forward to see you in the campus once the pandemic is over. The students start coming in the campus.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
You already know us because you are also one of us, because you have been seeing how Amity University have been evolving. You have seen our exhibitions right from, maybe 2-3 years you have seen after the pandemic started. So therefore, thank you so much again to take out time. And I would like to thank the students also. Okay, the students also for participating in the discussions and answering, ma'am, because that is also very, very important. And along with that, everyone, the team, Devaditya sir, the way he arranged everything, people behind the scene who have, actually, like Boni ma'am is there, and the mentors who have influenced and asked the students to participate in it, the IT people, because everything, a lot of preparation goes behind this session of 1 hour. So thank you everyone, and especially ma'am for taking out time.
And it was my pleasure. And if they learn, this is so close to my heart, and if they all start learning and wearing all this, this is going to be the happiest thing for me for always.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you. So over to Devaditya.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. And thank you, students. We all can probably join the session now. Thank you again for participating. We'll again see you all in some other webinar. So
thanks all of you, girls and guys.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Was an amazing
Thanks for
session.
being patient and hearing all my gyan. But it was really a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shiranjanta. Thank you, Devaditya.